You are listening to the Techie Leadership Show with Bogdan and Andrei. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Techie Leadership Show. Today with us we have Oleg Giberstein. He is the co-founder at CoinRule. CoinRule is a beginner-friendly platform to send automated trading instructions to cryptocurrency exchanges. CoinRule is your smart assistant for trading, allowing you to take full control of your trading while being able to fight back against hedge funds and automated bots. And for those of you listening, you have until the end of the month to get into the crowdfunding campaign, because as Oleg already told us, it might actually close earlier because of overfunding.
Yes.
How about that?
They have the problem, they have a money problem. The problem is they're getting too much of
money.
Good problem to have.
Hello,
Yeah.
Oleg, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Andrei. Thanks, Bogdan. Great to be
Do you
here.
want to add anything else about yourself?
Maybe just a few words just about my background. So I was born in Moldova originally, grew up in Germany, then came to the UK, studied here in the UK. I'm currently based in London, did a master's in Oxford, studied first international relations, went to work in banking. So I worked for a few years at Citigroup. I was in the corporate banking team. I was in the global public sector team, worked with basically with governments, government-owned entities, anything credit and lending related. Got a bit tired of it because it's just, I didn't feel like I was really hands-on involved enough in the things I wanted to be doing. And then I left in 2016 to start my first startup. That was like a career mentoring marketplace. We did that for a while. It was going quite well, but we had some issues on the team. It was mostly my fault. Maybe I can talk about it a little bit later on from like a tech leadership point of view.
Okay.
But I went then worked for another 2 years for an organization where I was helping to build like a tech sector in Palestine. So it was an NGO. So I traveled very regularly to the region, was working with a lot of stakeholders there. But I kept doing startup on the side. I was really getting into the whole crypto and blockchain space, met then my co-founders, Gabriele and Zdenek. Well, actually, I'd met them already during my first startup when we joined Mass Challenge, the accelerator, but kept like talking to them, kept talking to a lot of people about crypto, really went down the rabbit hole. And then we started CoinRule and went full-time on it last year, and things have been going really well since.
The rest is history.
So I guess you made a lot of money with Bitcoin.
No, like I made good returns, but I didn't make a lot of money because first of all, the people who really did extremely well are the people who came in, 6-7 years ago. I really got into the space in 2017 at the time of like the big bubble when a lot of people came in. I did well in that time. Then, the markets crashed. I did very badly. And then I recovered over the last, year and a half. And since like this summer, there was the DeFi, the decentralized finance boom. So there was some really good opportunities as well. So that went well too, but obviously, we are not in Bitcoin 2011 territory.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Don't remind me about it.
I heard an amazing story. Like at the beginning of Bitcoin, like the founder was giving, like if you came to one of his events, he would give you like 1,000 Bitcoins. Just here, take them. And a lot of people, like when it went like to almost 20,000 euros a Bitcoin, they remember, oh my God, I got 1,000 Bitcoins. Where's my wallet? Because it was physical. Some of them even went to the scrapyard to search
their hard drives.
their old hard drives to maybe get the money.
Yeah.
Lots of stories.
Yeah. But I mean, it's crazy. It's like a gold rush. It's like a modern day gold rush.
Yeah. And during your brief presentation, you already mentioned like a real world problem with leadership. You said you worked in finance and with government, and you decided to stop because you didn't feel it was hands-on enough for you. And I've heard that a lot of times, and I won't venture out to guess if it's exactly the same for you, but for a lot of people, when they say it's not hands-on enough, usually what they mean is that they don't see the impact that they do through their work. And it reminds me of the story of a guy who made bolts, industrial grade bolts, and he quit his job. He says, it's meaningless, it's pointless. But none of his bosses and nobody else ever told him that the bolts he made kept the carriages locked. So he had a very important job. He just didn't see the meaning in it.
That's a great way actually of putting this. I mean, the way you have to imagine it is that something like, I mean, banking. There's a lot of great opportunities. You meet a lot of great people, but at the end of the day, like, it's a gigantic institution. You're dealing with huge amounts of money, but like your direct actual influence on things doesn't feel real. And there are also other issues. Like, I mean, I saw, you see kind of the career progression and you see what your bosses are doing. And you think to yourself, is this what I want to be doing in 10, 15 years time? And the answer for me was just no. And I think I was lucky enough to meet great people and learn a lot of fantastic things. But at the end of the day, like, that wasn't the life I wanted to live. I wanted to have at least the chance to have more impact on something concrete. And I just knew I had to leave. Like, it was quite difficult because it took me a long time to really figure out, like, I knew nothing about startups, right? I didn't know, like, I was coming from a rather academic background. So the transition for me, even into banking, like private sector, was actually like not the obvious career path. But then to go on and do a startup, that was even less obvious. So it took me kind of some digestion and thinking to really get there.
Yes. So what are like the major mind shifts you have to go through to be able to go like from the corporate world to the startup world?
I mean, there are multiple. The first one is you have to kind of be able to understand that the fear you're having, it's actually just the fear of uncertainty. It's very easy. Like, a lot of people are stuck doing jobs they hate, living a life they don't want to live, because they are afraid of what if. What if this goes wrong? What if, like, I will never get back into a paying job again, etc., etc. But those fears are fears in your mind. They're not necessarily real. There's this exercise that I like a lot. It's called the fear setting exercise from Tim Ferriss, actually.
Okay.
Where you write down your biggest fears, and like you write down, how likely is this? What would I do if this actually happened? How likely could I get back to my previous life? And actually, if you really like quantify that, you find out actually these fears are really quite abstract, and it's not like my life will end. I'm just being in a really miserable place right now. How much, like, what it can really go wrong,
Yeah.
Yes.
Especially like you don't, like, you can't imagine how often I speak to people and friends who are like, wow, you're so brave. I would never do that. And I'm like, well, it's not actually like the brave. It's just a brain switch. It's just the moment when you understand that you can try out things. It's your life. And it's so short. Like, it's almost, I'm more scared not to try out things and then regret than actually doing it.
Yes.
Yeah. A friend of mine had a similar thing happen to him. He had a lot of acquaintances that used to ask him for advice. He would give them sound advice, and then they would be like, what if this and what if that? And he got so tired of these questions. He found, in my opinion, the best answer. He would go like, what if the moon suddenly falls out of orbit and crash lands into the earth? You should really worry about stuff like that.
Yeah. Exactly. If we worry about the things out there, we'll never sleep at night.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. And one exercise that I found useful, and I just discovered it this year, is when you have like a bad feeling, you don't feel like fear or anxiety, whatever you want to call it, stop and think about what are the thoughts that are going through your mind, And usually it's a way, in a way it's also miraculous, because when you realize the link between how you're feeling and your thoughts, one, you get to change your thoughts and you get to experience a new feeling. And my advice is pick a good thought, something that emboldens you and generates good feelings in you. And it's a simple exercise. It sounds really simple, but it really transforms your life, and it gives you a new optic on what is happening around you, and it empowers you. It gives you like more control on how you're feeling and what you're thinking.
One very simple way that I found to do it, and I would recommend doing it while you're alone, not for other reasons, but you'll see why immediately. Describe, like with a loud voice to yourself, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and then you can shift. And I then describe, and now I'm thinking about something new and I'm feeling something, and just see the mind shift and the change. And just try it out. It forces you, when you do this, it forces you to live in the present, because all our fears, they're never present, they're only future. So it's never present based.
Yeah. And it's really funny, because you realize that all your feelings are basically generated by your thoughts, and usually that are thoughts that are running in the background, silent processes, and it takes a little work to basically open up the console and see like, what's using up all this memory?
Yeah.
That's why something like fear setting helps. Like, you have to name your fears before you can address them. So yeah, that goes really into that direction.
Exactly. And now moving on to stories.
Can you share with us what is the biggest leadership success story that you've witnessed personally?
Sure. I mean, I've been lucky enough to have witnessed quite a few. But let me say, the one that impresses me the most is probably something you wouldn't necessarily expect. I'm a big football fan. And so a lot of my analogies are from that world. The football coach of Liverpool, Jurgen Klopp, I've been following his career for like basically since 20 years, since he really became a coach. And it just never fails to impress me, because it's, there are a lot of great coaches out there. Many of them start already at the big clubs with big budgets. But to actually take over a club and then consistently build it up over a period and consistently overperform exceptionally, and do that in 3 completely different settings, shows that you as a leader have a strategy that works. Now, Jurgen Klopp, he started off as coach of Mainz in the 2nd German division. Over a 7-year period, took them to the 1st division, established them there, went to Borussia Dortmund. They were really struggling at the time. They were kind of lower tier, had no money for players. Within a few years, he had won the league twice with them. No other team in Germany has since won the league. It's only been Bayern Munich winning it every year since. Took them to a Champions League final. Then he could have taken on any club after this. He took on Liverpool. Now, people look at Liverpool, they're a great team doing really well. They were like, when he took over 5 years ago, they were nowhere. They hadn't won the league in 25 years, had wasted their money, had a rubbish squad, like nothing was working. He took over, and from day one, you could see the trajectory of the team change, just really change. Like, they started to play completely different. The entire club, the transfer policies, the players they would buy, the youth development, everything just started to transform. He said literally on his first day, he said it would take him 4 years to win a trophy. 4 years later, he won the Champions League. And it's just, it blows my mind to watch something so consistently successful. Now, what about it is really so impressive? What's impressive is he's incredibly authentic. He's incredibly caring. Like, he genuinely loves his players. Like, it's easy to say that, right? Every boss should, really respect his players. Like he takes it to a completely different level. Players playing for him. Like, when he was coaching Dortmund, 2 of his players played for the German national team who won the World Cup in 2014. So, wow, you would think these are like incredible players. After Jurgen Klopp left Borussia Dortmund, these 2 players completely failed everywhere else they went. One of them plays now in the German third division. One of them is sitting on the bench of my team, Frankfurt. Like they were players who for years performed not at, let's say, 100%, but at 110% of what they were capable of, simply because Jurgen Klopp made them feel that they are the best, they're the most special. Like they didn't want to disappoint him, so they were ready to literally die for him. His players run with like a knife between their teeth, literally. You know, in professional football, everyone performs, let's say, at 96, 97% of their capacity all the time.
Yes.
Because that's the level you have to hold up. Jurgen Klopp's players are able to perform at 98, 99% consistently. That 1-2 extra percent makes them able to beat teams that are actually better than them. Like if you just compare the team sheets, they're better, yet Jurgen Klopp's teams win. I honestly, I don't think, I mean, for sure there must be leadership examples elsewhere, maybe even more impressive. But like in terms of like really kind of seeing something so clearly in front of you, I think this is an incredible example. I don't think there's a more impressive leader out there at the moment than Jurgen Klopp.
And do you think that his success is based by the fact that he feels that his players are special and shows them how they're special, and because until they actually believe that they're special and they're better than they believe and they break through their barriers, do you think that's the secret sauce?
I think that's a large part of it. The other part is like he trusts them so much. Like, I mean, he expects a lot from, like he expects a huge amount from them, but he also trusts them so much. And none of them ever wants to disappoint his trust. He's the kind of character, he knows the name of every single employee of Liverpool. Like he'll care about how the bus driver is doing. He'll care about how the guy is doing who's making the food in the canteen. Like he's, as a personality, he's so intense that like it's just so intense, but so loving, so caring that it just it infects everyone around him. There was this famous game last 2 years ago. They were playing a semi-final against Barcelona, one of the best teams in world football. And they had lost the first game. They had lost 4-0. So they had to come back from a 4-0 down. Impossible. Sorry, not 4-0, 3-0. So they had to come back from a 3-0 down against like the best team in the world. And before the game, he just said to his players, they were missing like two of their best players, Liverpool. And he tells them before the game, everyone thinks it's impossible, but because it's you, it is possible. And they go out and they win 4-0. And they played with two players who have since like barely played for the team, Origi and Shaqiri, because they're not like top players in the team. And with those two players playing against basically maybe the best team in the world, with like Lionel Messi and all, and they go out and they beat them 4-0. It blows my mind.
Well, it really makes sense why he has such a big impact, because again, it's a team sport, so you have to manage the whole team, not the individual players. That's why a lot of people don't understand when it comes to team sports, individual input has way less performance and in the outcome of the game than team effort and how all the player base works together. That's why in top universities, when they recruit new students, they never look for athletes that had great success in team sports. They always look for athletes that had great success in individual sports. Because in an individual sport, if you lose, it's not the season, not the team, not the weather. You're the driving factor. And also, even in individual sports, going back to what the trainer did, I always remember. I'm not a big fan of tennis. I do watch it sometimes. Lately, we have a very good female tennis player. Her name is Halep. She won a lot of tournaments. You could see the change in her performance, not because of physical reasons, but how her trainer manages her confidence and psychological level. So she's the exact same person, nothing different physically, but she will win a tournament or lose a tournament by a huge margin, depending on how she
Feels about herself.
feels about herself and the game. So yeah,
Yeah,
the importance of a leader.
Yeah, and she struggled a lot with it, and it's something that you have to do, like in all business life and in everything, and even in family life. You have to help those around you to feel better about themselves, to have more strength, more courage. Focus on the good parts. It never hurts.
Yeah,
It only helps.
She would absolutely crush all her opponents up until the semifinal. And I don't want to guess why, for whatever reason. Maybe it's because she just couldn't see herself winning. She would lose badly in the final, which made no sense. How can you crush everybody else and do so poorly in the final when everything is built up to that point?
No, it's really important, like the attitude that you get, and to help inspire an attitude of winning inside the company, to help people grow. One thing that really stuck with me, like a coach, a trainer said, like it doesn't take a lot of time to get like a new attitude. Usually you can even have it like instantly. And the best example he gave was like rock stars. Usually you start out with a small band, you try to
Garage
do
band,
a garage band, yes, exactly, and you try to do something successful. And said like the people that had success, there are a lot of one-hit wonders and or smaller success, but the people that stuck with it and became like millionaires and worldwide renowned are the people that had a shift, and you could see it, like if you saw like video clips before and after the shift, you could tell it by how they walked. They actually became a rock star in their own minds and said, this is who I am now, and expect and view the world differently. And you as a leader, if you know exactly how your people should perceive the world, to help you succeed with the company, you can do amazing things. And it's not easy. It sounds really easy theoretically.
Oh God.
But actually doing it, it's something else.
The mind shift is
I think the most important thing there is that you have to be 100% authentic. You have to do what you say and say what you do. And it needs to be really clear to your team, and you need to be there to consistently build them up. Like you need to be, as a leader, you need to be a source of strength for your team. They need to feel better when they speak with you. Like you need to make them feel better about themselves. They need to be able to feel positive and strong just because you are their manager. And to be able to feel better from that, they need to trust you completely. And to trust you completely, you need to be authentic. Like you need to be yourself. And of course, if you're a bad person, you should change before you are yourself. Yourself, that doesn't work. But you see what I mean.
Yeah, and for anybody listening, one way to be able to discern if either you or anybody else is themselves, so while they're performing any activity, doesn't matter if it's sport, corporate world, corporate work, government work, doesn't matter. If they're loose and relaxed, they're themselves. I go back to professional athletes. If I name tennis, you can think of Federer or Djokovic. They seem loose and relaxed. They're very focused
and playful. They're also playful. It's not like they're not, oh my God, I'm going there, I have to win this. They have like the confidence, and as going back to being authentic. When you're authentic, you don't lie. That's the base of it, because people know. If you go to a maybe you have like a developer, and he's not that good at coding. If you go to him and tell him you're a good developer, he's gonna know that you're lying. He's gonna say, yes, thank you so much. Maybe ask for a raise later on. But you're not doing any favors to him or for yourself by thinking like, I told him he's a good developer. Maybe his mindset will change and he'll become a good developer. a better approach would be like to accept reality. Like, look, you're not that good now, but you can be great, and I can help you. How
Yeah.
can we work together? How can I help you become great? Because I truly believe that you can improve your coding skills.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No one wants to underperform. Everyone wants to be great. It's just that people have complex lives and people have different things holding them back. It can be fear, it can be family, it can be obligations, it can be doubts. Maybe they're in the wrong profession, but no one wants to be an underperformer. Like
Oh yes.
no one is doing something bad because they want to be doing it. It's even very often, most of the time, even people who do something wrong, like knowingly doing something wrong, they don't feel great about it. They do it because of a variety of factors that come together. And in a way, your role as leader is to be the enabler for them to be great.
There's
Oh.
an even bigger problem with that. You mentioned greatness, but how do you define greatness? Some people say, well, it changes from field to field. I'll go even further. Success and greatness differs from person to person, because and going back to tech developers, that's why a lot of developers suffer from imposter syndrome,
Mhm.
because they cannot, nobody taught them how to quantify success and greatness. They might be outperforming, but they think like they're underperforming. And this happens a lot, and it leads to burnout and to stress and anxiety and high turnover rate and quitting and all kinds of stupid problems, simply for the fact that, just like you said, that they're
No.
stressed about things that they don't know if they're real or not.
Oh.
Yeah, it's something, imposter syndrome is something you come across in a lot of places from a lot of people. But in a way, like it can also help, like it drives you to improve. Like if you are not feeling safe, you will work
To one
harder.
extent, to one extent,
To an
if it's manageable. If
Yeah.
you truly believe you're by far the stupidest person in your city, that will not help you.
Or you feel
Yeah.
like you're doing all this work, even studying, and you're like on a hamster wheel going nowhere. It looks like that because that's also the problem, like with studying, and something that you also have to wrap your mind. The more you learn about the domain, the more you feel like you understand less about
The
it.
more questions
Usually
you
the
have.
ignorants are really sure about
Oh
Yeah.
a
yes.
domain. They're expert. I know exactly how this is done and how it works. An expert will start like, oh, it's also that edge case and you have that issues, and maybe it's not like that. We should do more studying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, so
Even something as simple as surgical masks. Experts will tell you, will speak for 3 days about the importance of use, edge cases, when to use, when not to use, how to use, why you should use, blah, 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 blah. And you ask them, are you sure this will work? And they'll say, I cannot tell you. I studied for 40 years. I have practice in the field. I cannot give you a
case
definitive
studies,
answer.
yes.
And then you have, it's not fair to judge people, but for the purpose of the show, then you have a moron that says like, I know for a fact they do not work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're sure about it.
Yeah. The Donald Trump syndrome.
Well, depending on what part of the world you are, you can
Sure.
substitute the variable name with a
Yeah.
different,
With your local Trump.
different value, different value. And speaking about failing like that, what is the biggest leadership fail that you've had the unfortunate situation of witnessing?
The biggest leadership failure. There are a few cases, of course, that come to mind. But I don't want to talk. I don't want to use any more football analogies. One is enough.
Okay.
I don't want to talk about people I've worked with closely because for various reasons. Like all those failures were failures where people tried. It just didn't work for various reasons. But one example I do want to give is myself in my first start,
Good.
because it's not like a major failure in the bigger picture of life, but it was a personal failure. I think when we started the startup, obviously, we had a great idea. We had a lot of like motivation, energy. I think we were really good people. What we didn't do was we didn't clearly define each other's expectations. Different founders in the team. We were first two, then we became three. Different founders had different expectations, and different, not even ideas for what the company would go, just the role they would be playing in it. And I saw the problem with that. Like I saw it. I was like, well, this if it stays like this will not work. But I assumed that we'll just manage it somehow. I thought we'll just keep going. Things will work out because I want them to work out. And then once things work out, everyone will get on the same page. And it just kept going with that. And it just wasn't working. And instead of changing course, I didn't. Because I was scared, because I'd already left my really good banking job to do this. So how could I admit to myself that this wasn't working? And then one co-founder left, another came. It was me and then two technical co-founders, but they weren't really like using the same frameworks. They weren't really agreeing on a lot of things. So in a way, like in my mind, we were building at that time one thing. Another co-founder, in his mind, we were building something else. And again, as a leader, instead of either saying, like, either clarifying the situation or just like leaving it or changing it or doing something, I didn't act. One, because I was afraid. Two, because I kept lying to myself that it will work, because we're all really smart people. At least we're a good team. It definitely could have worked, but because everyone had a different vision and expectation in their mind, it didn't. And it was my duty to align it, and I failed at that. So that was definitely like a leadership failure. What I learned from that was that you need to state clearly what are your expectations, and you need to have those expectations clarified from everyone in your team, because otherwise that's not going to work. If people are rowing into different directions, hoping for the best is not going to solve it. And in a way, like you just end up wasting your time, and you end up wasting everyone else's time, because you're doing something that is bound to fail because there isn't alignment. Now, of course, there will be always disagreements and there will be discussions, and that's great. But those discussions need to be spoken, not unspoken. They need to be in the open. They need to be almost like, these are assumptions we have. I have a different assumption about this. You have a different assumption about that. But that's fine, because we're testing different assumptions. But what we can't do is we can't just think one thing to ourselves, say another thing to the others, because you don't want to shake the boat. And then just keep hoping that everything somehow magically solves itself. And I got definitely much better at that, but it's a learning process. Like by nature, I'm a rather diplomatic guy. I'm not someone who just puts the fist down and says, we do
which
things.
is good, which is very good.
Which is good, yeah. Which is good, but like it means that to grow as a leader, I need to define my own style, and I need to be able to get the buy-in from everyone around me, and I need to be more outspoken about it. I need to be better in communicating that, and I think I've improved in it a lot in the last 2 years of building Coinru, and mostly because I'm really lucky to have really great co-founders. I mean, you had Gabriele here on the show.
Yes.
I think amazing, and compensates for a lot of like my weaknesses, because he's much more clear, much more direct in his communication. That's something I'm trying to improve. And also Zdenek, our third co-founder, he's good in like kind of going into the really deep technical details of the things we do, and kind of present it to us clearly. So I think in terms of alignment, we are in a much better shape than where I was with my first startup. And that's really been like a journey for me to improve that.
Oh, yes.
No. And it goes back, I think, like most people think like only the co-founder needs to be aligned, which is important, because if you have like the leaders pulling in different directions, it's really hard, and you have to be basically on the same page. But the idea is it's not your page, it's a jigsaw puzzle of everybody's pages, and you take a little from you and a little bit from, because it's a give and take. But what is really important, I think, like when you hire people, you have to be really clear about what you want them to do, how you want them to work, like what's the goal of the scope, what's the purpose for why you are hiring them. because lots of people, they get hired and they have no idea what they're going to do.
And why they were hired.
You have like the job description, you know, it's vague exactly what you're going to do about it. And it takes like a long time until it becomes really clear what they should do each day and each month and each year to drive the goals of the company, because it's not stated, and it's not usually it's not clear in the people doing the hiring what they should do. They know like we need a developer because we want to grow this application, but they don't know exactly. We need them to be able to do this because this is our vision, and we need these features, and we want them done in a certain way, and actually have the discussion with the developer to see if maybe they might like the application, the idea of the application, but not like the way it's implemented, it's done inside. It's built, and because of the architecture and the design decisions that have been taken. And there's a lot of conflict in that way, because people see like, it looks really good because you don't see like what's the back and how it all works, how it's tied together. And you get hired and then you see like, oh my God, either the code is a mess and people don't like to work with messy codes, or the code is really nice and pretty, but it's so high level written that they're not used to it because they're used to work in the murky, crappy code, and that's where they thrive. They know how to work it, clean it up a little. So even in that, you have to know like it's not just bringing a developer in, it's about bringing the right developer that
for the right job.
Yeah, that wants to work with that code base and drive it to where you want to take it as a leader, as a business.
To oversimplify the two main problems you just told us in the failure story. The first thing you said that you had expectations and reality wasn't kind enough to conform to your expectations, and you didn't do anything about it at first. So the first step that I would share with anybody listening is be honest with yourself. You have to be honest with yourself.
Authentic. That's all accept.
Which means to be authentic. And then you have to be honest with other people. You have to extend honesty and expect honesty in return. Now, honesty does not mean full disclosure, okay? It's on a person-to-person basis, on a job-to-job basis. Only be disclose as much as that person needs to know to perform the duty he has to perform.
You know, there's one challenge there, which is, let's say you want to be honest, but what if you're not sure yourself? Like you think that sometimes you think that there's a situation, there are two possible interpretations of it. And
yes.
In a way, as a startup person, you want to be always optimistic and always believing in the positive. But then you have the doubt in your head. Now you're thinking, is the doubt just me being unnecessarily pessimistic, or is that doubt how actually it is, and I need to be honest about it and act on it? And that becomes like a judgment call and an experience call. It's really difficult to get it right, because there are a lot of problems you can solve with enthusiasm. It's amazing how much, how important it is to have this positive, optimistic mindset. And if you are kind of a cautious, slightly pessimistic leaning person, it's really easy to kind of see doubts, make them really big in your mind, and then just constantly create a mess because you think that everything is going badly and you're just, but then in the end, you're the one who drags it down. Whereas you actually see it clearly and make the judgment. That's, I think, the toughest skill really to acquire for a leader, to know when that doubt is genuine doubt that requires action and when it is just your fears materializing.
You know what? And this is something that I like doing, is when you talk with a person, hiring them or want to do business, I think it's always good and it really brings them alive, and I think it increases their motivation to work with you. Is you paint them the picture, the optimism, everything, but you also tell them about the pitfalls that you see, because that means, at least in my mind, it means that you thought about it. You know there are risks assigned to it. It's not like you're a child, you see only possibilities and there's no way to fail. That means you haven't thought through everything.
It's like going to the dentist, and I'll describe you two different dentists, and you get to say which one you think is best. The first, they're both professionals. The first one sits you on the chair, tells you I'll be with you shortly, doesn't tell you how much time it takes, comes back, open your mouth, starts working, and you're all stressed, clumped up. He finishes the work he did, bills you for it, goodbye. The second dentist does exactly the same thing with one minor exception. He talks you through the process. Okay, Oleg, I need to speak with my colleague. I'll be back in 5 minutes. When I come back, we will go through the initial proceedings. And when he starts open your mouth, I will look to see what the situation is. He says, now I'll put the suction pump, now I'll clean the tooth, now I'll scrape, he just talks you through. Which one do you think is better?
The communicating one.
Okay. Professionally, what's the difference between them? They both did the same job. You got the same outcome.
The second one, the one who talks, is a better salesman because he makes you feel psychologically, he makes his customer feel psychologically much better, much more secure. Like, which one will you want to come back to? The one where you know what's going on, or like you as a customer, you don't necessarily know what's better, what's worse. Like,
yes.
But at least with the
exactly.
second, well, the story could be even more interesting. What if the one who doesn't communicate well does the better job, but
it's
the second
even better? Yes. You would still feel like the second one is better because he told you what he did. You have some ideas, you know what to expect. The whole experience, it becomes a little more pleasurable.
It's the same with leaders, going back to having these doubts. Nobody expects you as a leader to be infallible. Okay, so they will be grateful for the.
But that's what most leaders expect them. They have to be infallible.
Nah, it's
setting them up for failure.
Nobody is infallible, so they will appreciate when you're honest about the whole process. Like, do a general description. Some of the members of the team who are more involved might get more details because they know more about it. Those details mean stuff to them. But everybody gets at least a loose perspective on the whole process. Then if something happens, even if it's something bad, if it was something they might be expecting, like the dentist saying, you might feel a pain, you're not going to be scared about the pain, even if it's excruciating pain, just for the fact that it's normal. Okay, the professional told you might feel it. You might not feel it, you might feel it.
And since we're philosophizing, I'm really curious, like, Oleg, what is your leadership philosophy?
What's my leadership philosophy? I mean, I think the most important things, in a way, we've already covered them. I do want to be authentic, and I do want to be an enabler for my team. I see my role, it's a bit of a cliche, but I'm going to use it. There's this idea, it's probably a very modern thing, but this idea of like a servant leader, a leader who sees himself as being a facilitator and enabler for his team. That's how I see myself. Like, I want to have the right people in the right tasks, which is basically for me as a leader to do that, to put them in those right places. But then the rest of my role consists of getting the best out of them by helping them to thrive. If they have doubts, I can clarify them. If they have blockages, I can remove those blockages. If they have, if they need to learn something, I can find a way for them to learn it. Maybe I can teach it to them, but most likely someone else can teach it to them, or they can read something. But it's for me to enable them to come to me with those questions or doubts or problems, feel confident enough to share them with me, and for me to then be able to address them. And in terms of authenticity, I want to be in a position where, as I said before, where I do what I say and say what I do, like where there's not any of these uncomfortable silences and doubts where the person thinks, is he thinking this or is he doing that? But because they know that I am the way I am and I am straightforward and I am authentic, they have that trust in me. Like there isn't this like what if kind of doubts and small hesitations which multiply over time, but that they feel confident and comfortable with me. That's what I want to be my leadership style, and that's what I'm working towards.
And how is it like impacting the quality of the work that people get done?
Good question. I mean, it would be better to ask my team that question. I mean, but I'm very happy.
From your point of view.
Yeah. No, from my point of view, I think we've made some incredible progress over the last, specifically this year, over the last 6 to 8 months. We've done some amazing work. We've shipped a lot of new features. We've improved the platform. We've managed to really scale up the team, managed to raise funding in an extremely difficult environment with COVID.
Yes.
So I think in that regard, we've definitely we've done what we set out to do, but there's always more work to be done. You always wonder, should we maybe do this or that? There's always like we are at the point where we are getting a lot of users through the door, we get a lot of traction, but still we know that there are areas we need to improve. And again, it's as a leader to then it's more a question then for the leader to decide where things need to go next rather than for the team. So I think the team has done extremely well. It's now for us as leaders to make sure that we are prioritizing the right things to make sure that CoinRule goes where it needs to go. But I think we've really proven this year that we can deliver, and it's now a question of continuously doing that.
Well, that sounds really great. And I like the fact that you're working to help improve your team and taking them to the next level. And with that in mind, what are the top 3 leadership tips you have for aspiring leaders?
Like leadership tips. First of all, to be able to manage others, you need to be able to manage yourself. Like, are you on time? Do you have enough discipline? Is your mind clear? Do you do things like meditating or journaling, which can help you to think? Do you take time to think through stuff? Like a lot of people, they feel so under pressure that they try to just constantly be doing things. But actually, as a leader, you need to be able to take time out and think.
Oh my God, yes.
But it's actually very difficult because let's say you do 100 things in the morning, and then you have 45 minutes to think, but your brain is like racing. That's not going to work. So you need to have a structure. You need to have a structure that allows you to think, but that means you need to be able to structure your day. It's really tough. This is really the difficult stuff, because you wake up and sometimes it's already crazy. Like there's so many things going on. Where do you find that time? So a lot of leaders find that in the evenings or in the early mornings, or you just need to find a structure that works for you. And what has helped me massively personally is to have a certain type of structure, certain morning routines, certain, journaling routines, certain meditative practices. Do I do it as consistently as I would like to? No. But I've been improving and I've been doing it, and it has been helping me a lot. And I think that's the first steps to become a leader. Like if you can manage yourself at least better than how you managed yourself 1 year ago, it's also a good sign that you are able to start managing others.
It's good that you mentioned meditating, and then you want to exemplify routines. A lot of people get confused when they hear that they need to meditate. They think about Hollywood movies and striking a pose, and they're like, "Oh my God, my knees hurt."
Get your incense there.
Yeah, and I can't
hope
sit
you're not.
on the floor.
If you're doing that way, it's also good.
It's okay if you want to do it that way, but that's just one facet. So for a lot of people, a lot of people are meditating without even knowing about it. Okay, and because they don't know about it, they leave the outcome to chance, rather than taking the horse by the reins and meditating in a positive outcome that they decide. They just leave it to chance. For some people, the walk to work, the 25 minutes walk to work, that's where they meditate. And a lot of people
or driving or taking the subway, whatever you're doing, or now you're not most of us are staying at home.
Yeah, some people noticed that when they found out. It's like, why do I feel better during the week, and I feel crappier in the weekend? And somebody said, well, you're a workaholic. And he said, no, I do a lot of work in the weekends also. The thing missing was he didn't get his daily dose of meditation, once in the morning, once in the evening. For other people, it's fishing or a hobby or whatever it is. Anything that your body can work close to almost on autopilot, while your mind can subconsciously focus on another thing.
Yeah, people get that in the shower or in other places. But I mean, it helps to be conscious of that. Like, I think
Yes.
it helps to be
Yes.
conscious of that. For example, the way I think also of meditation, it's like it's working on my attention muscle. A lot of people get stressed, like they meditate and they constantly have thoughts and they think, oh, wow, I'm not doing this right. This is not working. But the way I try to think about it is if I meditate and I get distracted, and during the meditation, I remember even one time that I'm distracted and come back to the meditation, then it's been a successful meditation because I've trained that attention muscle. That attention muscle reminded me that I should be doing something else, which is meditating, and I come back to it. So it's like, sometimes you play football and you have a terrible game, but you play one good pass, and it's the same with the meditation.
Yeah, the right place at the right time. And also, if you do that and you get insights, which a lot of people do, it helps to do the second part, which is journaling. It's great to do it again on a reoccurring basis. It can be daily, it can be 3 times a week, whatever works for you. Write down. It helps. And second part, go back later and
That's
read.
I want to ask you, do you go back over your journaling and read it from time to time?
It's a good question. I do it usually at the end of the year. I do like kind of a bit of an annual review and I go over it, but not necessarily, just kind of like to get a sense, to get a sense
Yes.
of things, get like a dimension. Like there are different schools of thought on this. I know some people don't look at it. It's just about getting your thoughts out of your brain and on paper, whereas other people will spend more time reviewing it. Yeah, I review things, but I wouldn't say like super intensively. Like I don't analyze every day, like that.
Well, I used to be like in the side that didn't do any reviews, and I just by chance I said, let me look, and you don't have to analyze it, just to see the progression in your thought patterns and how you've changed, because it's blurry. Like what did I achieve this year? How much did I change? Because you're with yourself 24/7, so you don't get to see everything. But if you go back, and that's like now I feel like it's like 75% of, let's say, of the value of journaling is the ability to go back and see your progression through a period of time, because it would really embolden you and say like, I did some stuff, and it gives you like the courage to do more.
Yeah, and it's also a mind shift, because some days you might have written that, oh, it's the worst day of my life, but you did something and then you notice 7 days later it's the best day in my life, and you got the results for the work you did on your worst day. And then you think about it, whether I feel worse or I feel great, it doesn't matter on the results. So if I get to choose, better feel good or at a decent level, not just, you don't want to be overhyped, at a decent constant level, rather than feel bad, since it doesn't impact the overall outcome anyway.
And tip number 2 and 3.
Tip number 2 and 3. Number 2, like I'm someone who believes that the way how you do anything is how you do everything. There are a lot of people, they feel that certain things are beneath them. Like they don't put enough focus and love and attention into it. I'm not someone who agrees with that at all. I think like if you do like a small task that maybe not is the most important to you, but if you decide to do the task, you better do it well, and forget about feeling too important for it. Like I think even if you are, I don't know, the president of the United States, but you're doing a small task, you should still be putting your absolute heart into it. And I think for a leader, that's a very important quality.
It is, because you're putting your time, which is the most precious thing you can put in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, arguably, like if maybe there's a prioritization question here. Maybe you shouldn't be doing that task, but that's a different question.
But
right?
if you decided to do it the best you can. And number three?
Number three is persistence. I think that a lot of good outcomes are not achieved because people don't show enough persistence. There's been in like the startup world this kind of trend to pivot. Whenever something doesn't seem to be going, you just pivot, and it can make sense. Of course, you have to be flexible, but it's surprising the number of things that can actually work out if people put enough persistence into it. Obviously, you need to have a framework, that's the most difficult part. In the Lean Startup, the very famous book on startups, they call this like what is it called? Like pivot or persevere meetings.
Yes.
Like every 3 or 6 months, you should have like a pivot or persevere, where you basically decide on a set of predetermined metrics and variables if you are progressing sufficiently. So I think it's great to have a framework for these things. But generally speaking, startups, what few people understand is that startups don't fail because they didn't reach market or because they didn't satisfy their customers or whatever. Startups fail because the founders give up. And the founders give up because they're not reaching a market or because they're not satisfying their users, or yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, like, you don't need money to keep going. You can keep going. You can, people can take jobs and they can still keep going. It's just that usually people give up. But with enough persistence, anything can be made to work. It's just that very few people have that patience these days, or have kind of the framework in place to decide when is the time to pivot and when is the time to persevere.
Be flexible enough to notice opportunities, but committed enough to see them pan out.
Yeah, exactly. I try a concept I've learned from like the world of trading, from a book that I liked a lot called "What I Learned Losing $1 Million."
Interesting book.
Yeah,
it's a really good book actually. You should be setting stop losses for your life. I mean, a stop loss in the trading world is something that you put in place that sells your position if the price hits a certain level. And it's shocking how many people don't use even this most basic protection tool. For example, it's something you can do very, very easily with CoinRule, but few people generally tend to do that. Just they don't think about it. People prefer to think about all the good things that will happen, like prices go up, everything works out. They don't like to think about the bad things that will happen. So they discount the probability, or they think, oh, if it goes down, I'll sell it myself. But the reality is when it goes down, you're emotionally attached to it and you don't sell it yourself. So you need to have systems in place. Which is exactly why we're building CoinRule, because CoinRule is a system that you can set up and that protects you regardless of your emotional attachments.
But you have to set the safeguards even in your system, as you said, and most people don't do it. Exactly. And even like for business, you have to establish like when you say like, as you say, like pivot, have like some clearly defined lines when you say like, if we hit this, then it's time to pivot because it's not working. If we hit this situation, we should keep going, or have some milestones where you can evaluate and keep going or take a different path. But you have to be clear, and going back like what we discussed at the beginning with the founders, you have to get together, be on the same page, have clear expectation, and say like, okay, this is the good part, but what's like the downside, the pitfalls, what can happen, and what do we do then? Do we keep going on? And what thresholds do we keep going on? And when do we do something else?
Exactly. And like when you think about it in this way, you start to set stop losses for your career and stop losses for your relationships. Like let's say, a lot of people are in relationships which don't give them positive energy, but actually drag them down for various reasons. Do I have a stop loss at which I say, okay, this is it, this is not working. I need to change. Most people just kind of wing it day by day, and that just doesn't usually work in the long term.
Yeah.
That's true. And since you mentioned some books, what is the book that had the most profound impact on you?
So I've had a lot of books that really like influenced me in many ways. There's one book I read as a teenager from what's his name? I don't remember. But the book was called All the King's Men. It's really not like, let's say, entrepreneurial. It's more about like personalities. It's about this U.S. governor in the 1930s.
Oh, they made
the movie out
of it.
Yeah, exactly. There's a movie. I think the book is much better even.
Always.
It's this populist governor, and the book is actually the main character is his assistant, who's kind of following him on his path, and he has to make all these decisions, and he sees kind of his life go along with it. He's almost like this neutral observer, but he doesn't realize that he's actually a protagonist, not just an observer, and things keep happening, and he's just kind of, instead of acting, he's describing them. And it's really something that shaped my thinking of wanting to be.
How did it shape it?
That I want to be an active player, not just an observer. And the other book that really also shaped my thinking was the 4-Hour Workweek from Tim Ferriss. First of all, because of the mindset. I'd never read something like that before. It was like my first kind of, like, it was my first contact with like really like this concept of life hacking and like thinking differently about life. We're not just like stuck in this machine, but actually we can think out of the box. So it gave me the belief that it's possible to do things differently, which then led me to a lot of other things.
But do you get to work only 4 hours a week?
Absolutely. But a lot of people, that's the funny thing. People see the title of the book and they think it's about just working 4 hours per week.
Yes, I know. That's why I asked you.
Exactly. But it's actually about reducing the number of things you don't want to be doing to 4 hours a week, so you can then focus on everything else that's important, the rest of it.
I was going to say that.
I probably work much more today than I worked in banking, and I worked a lot in banking. But I enjoy significantly more what I'm doing. So that's a trade-off I'm happy to accept.
Yeah,
that's awesome, Oleg. And if people want to find out more about you, where should they go?
So they can find me on LinkedIn, Oleg Giberstein, but probably the best place to reach me is either Twitter @ogiberstein, or if you have a question or something you want to discuss, you can also email me on oleg@coinrule.io.
Perfect.
Awesome.
I'll add the links, and anybody listening, if you want to bounce ideas with Oleg, you can contact them via the links that he just mentioned. Just remember to give like a very short intro. Hi, Oleg. I heard your episode at Techie Leadership. No, I'm not a weird stranger. Can we exchange some ideas? And I think he'll gladly accommodate you when he has the time.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Oleg.
Thanks
for coming on the show.
Great talking to you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
That was today's episode. Tune in daily. Rate, like, subscribe, and share, please. Oh, you can find further info and materials in the show notes on techyleadership.com, including links to the guest book recommendations.